Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Can communities across the region collaborate on workforce, transportation, and more? Tonight on Behind the Headlines. Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Mark Luttrell, Shelby County Mayor. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Chip Johnson, Mayor of Hernando. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Mike Palazzolo, Mayor of Germantown. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Along with Bill Dries, Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. You all are here today in part. The Mid-South Mayor's Council has a big event coming up next week, Region Smart, in partnership with the Urban Land Institute. The goal of this, you had your first annual Region Smart Summit, Mid-South Mayor's Conference, however you want to frame it, last year. And I'll go to you, Mayor Luttrell. What is the goal for this group? Why communities that we, at least in the media and certainly among people, seem to always be competing and at each other's throats and trying to get each other's jobs? I mean, that's the kind of narrative that is often played out. This is bringing everybody together. What's the goal?
Well, regional planning. It is very simply stated. We, as a region, we've got to plan as one. We talk about metropolitan statistical areas, and MSAs basically include multiple counties over multiple states and multiple jurisdictions. And so much of what we do in Memphis or what happens down in Hernando has an impact on everyone else in the Mid-South area. So what we're trying to do is what many regions across America are doing, and that is trying to sit down, kind of dissect the issues that we're facing, come to a common understanding. As much as anything else, it's networking as well. How good it is that we sit down with Chip, with Mike, and with other mayors and leaders of the communities just to get to know each other on a first-name basis so that we can work through any issues that might come up that require some intense discussion.
So, Mayor Johnson, similar kind of question or framing for you. I mean, at this table over the 6-7 years we've been doing the show, I can't tell you how many guests have said, we're losing all our jobs to Mississippi. Everyone's moving to Mississippi. The schools, I mean, all this kind of, not villainization of Mississippi, but they're winning and we are losing. People have said that for years in some fashion. For you, I mean, if you're winning, why do you want to collaborate with these folks? If that is, or is that framing the way that people do frame that argument? Is that just off?
I think it's a little off, and I think that no one can win if your neighbors aren't winning as well. So, and it's true, many people are moving to DeSoto County and to Hernando, but in the morning, a large percentage of them get up and drive to Memphis for their jobs. So we cannot wish ill will on Memphis or Shelby County or Germantown. And likewise, they can't wish ill will on us because some of the people choose to live there. And I think us getting to know each other is making that work out better because, of course, the people that live in my town, the ones that do have to leave in the morning and go to Memphis, I want them to be safe. I want them to bring back good paychecks. And, you know, we get a lot of our entertainment up there as well. And it's starting to flow both ways. People are starting to come across the state line to the south for entertainment and for jobs. And I think if we work this right, it's going to even out where we all win in this situation.
And for you, Mayor Palazzolo, I mean, Germantown grew as people left the city. I mean, that's kind of the story of Germantown in part. Your take on this whole notion of regional collaboration, where are the points at which you think Germantown and the whole area can thrive? You're still going to compete for certain things, I assume, but where is there an intersection where your interests align?
Oh, certainly. Well, you know, in a global economy, you have to be more regionally collaborative or you won't survive. I can give you a great example. We started a wellness coalition in Germantown, and we sent a small delegation down to Hernando to Mayor Chip because of some of the initiatives that he had started so that we could glean some of those best practices for our community. So, excuse me, you know, it's more about how do we keep the dialogue and find out what we have more in common so that we can work to grow together. And it's so important in today's economic framework. We have to do these things. And that way we break down some barriers, you know, under the leadership of Mayor Luttrell and others, this Region Smart initiative and all the work that the Mid-South Council of Mayors have done have really been very productive for our region.
All right, Bill.
So in the collaboration, Mike, has this actually had the effect of a mayor of a particular area, leaders of a particular area, better defining what it is that they do and better defining their goals?
Oh, certainly, because all of our communities are different. In Germantown, we're very much still a bedroom community, but we've embraced modern urbanist practices. We've landed a large national company that's moving into our community, and so how do we make sure that we provide all those great services for regional headquarters? How do we learn about what other communities are doing? So it makes so much sense to work together. When I started in public service 13 plus years ago, we didn't collaborate very well. As a matter of fact, we did a lot of this. We collided a lot. And I think it's a new day. There's new leadership in this region, and we embrace things. Maybe we'll talk about the Lamar Avenue corridor that's so important to thriving commerce in our area. But really, that doesn't affect Germantown. Why would we be supportive of it? Well, because it affects the entire region, and that's important for us. So that's an example how we can work together in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Luttrell, as a county mayor, being an arbiter of sorts, it seems, has always been part of the job description for that. So when you look at this collaboration, I would imagine that you've got several other arbiters in the room, and you don't necessarily have to be the only arbiter on this.
When I look at the role of a county mayor versus the role of a city mayor, there's a significant difference. The success of a county mayor depends upon that person's ability to work with the city mayors, because the counties have a role to play in each of our cities, and then actually crossing county lines and getting into other counties and other states is not an uncommon occurrence for county mayors. So I think it's vital that when you look at the role of county government, and then you look at what we're attempting to do with Region Smart, it's a perfect fit, because what we're doing is we're engaging multiple states, multiple counties, multiple cities and jurisdictions around common problems that we all face. There's not a single issue that these two mayors deal with on a daily basis that we all don't deal with on a daily basis. And any time that we can kind of collaborate or pool our resources is a force multiplier when it comes to seeking solutions. So it's an objective that we probably should have had years and years ago. But now that we realize the value that comes from it, it's been amazing. We were talking about this prior to the beginning of the show. It's amazing to see the hunger in these communities for this type of collaboration. And that's where I think the role of county mayors can really play a significant role in working with the city mayors to come up with some consensus around some very key issues.
In the case of Hernando, this is a chance to look on both sides of the state line and kind of compare notes, because there are some different relationships that are involved here when you talk about North Mississippi versus West Tennessee. So how does that kind of play out? Are there times when there's kind of envy that one side of the state line might have a better system, or is there that kind of shop talk, I guess?
I think that's always going on. We see the state of Tennessee and the state of Mississippi talking about incentive programs and comparing themselves to each other, and how can we incentivize more than the other one. And so we're always doing a little bit of that, but I think because of our relationships, we're not doing as much of that, trying to steal a business away from one state to another state or one city to another city. We're realizing that if a new business locates in Germantown, there are going to be job openings for the people that live in my town to go work there, and vice versa. Or if something big locates in Shelby County, people from Tunica may go fill those jobs. And I think that's vitally important that we look at that bigger picture. And as we advertise ourselves, Hernando has quite a bit to advertise, and so does Germantown, so does Shelby County. But if we can put all those assets together in one bigger advertisement, we'll be able to recruit better.
And contradicting what I said before, we did a show with a bunch of commercial real estate folks, I think in the fall, and they talked about bringing big projects and distribution centers and so on and so forth. And they really view it as a region. There are certain incentives in Mississippi that are just, if we don't use those incentives, that project isn't going to land in the Mid-South. It's not a matter of Mississippi versus Memphis, just that incentive structure works. The pilot structure in Shelby County and Memphis and Tennessee doesn't work. But one question and one of the themes that is going to be at Region Smart is transportation, and we've talked a lot about that. I mean, clearly, the city of Memphis, Shelby County, huge area. The area of Memphis is one of the biggest cities in the country area-wise, but not a lot of density. What is the answer to transportation? And I'll use the example that Harold Collins used to talk about, the former city councilman, ran for Memphis mayor, and he would talk passionately about people in his district who wanted jobs, who had jobs, but rode buses 2 hours to get the jobs in a distribution center far across town or whatever. What can be done? I mean, right now, can I take a bus from Hernando to downtown Memphis to Germantown? I mean, is this even possible?
There really isn't that option right now. And a lot of it just has to do purely with numbers. Public transportation requires density. And our county is very spread out right now. DeSoto County's got 175,000 people, but it's in a huge area. So when you try to crunch the numbers on public transportation, it's almost cost prohibitive at this moment. But we keep looking at it, we keep studying it. Hernando actually just got a senior transportation grant, the only city in the United States that got it. But it's just to take our senior citizens to places they need to go, like the farmers market or exercise classes. And we just haven't cracked the nut yet on how to get everybody that needs transportation where they need to be from one county to the next.
Eric,
yeah.
Just to chime in on that particular point, about 5 years ago, we initiated our regional green print, which all of us have been a part of the regional green print, but it addresses everything from transportation to neighborhoods to commercial interaction to residential integration of neighborhoods, any number of areas that cross county and state lines, because we realize that with the way things are moving, the fast advance of our society, we're not really on the point when it comes to the right solution to some very critical issues. So I think the regional green print gave us an opportunity to really sit down and start thinking collectively about things such as transportation.
Well, I think it was the first time you were on the show, Mayor Johnson, and I think it was about green print. And I was asking why, would you all participate? Hernando's thriving. Why in this big map of green trails? And I quoted you probably incorrectly. Many times later, you said, well, I like to ride my bike and we have great trails, but I can only ride my bike back and forth a couple miles so many times that I want to connect Hernando to these other places and then bring people back to Hernando. And that was the idea of green print, and as you just described it, right?
And that is the idea. And we've got, usually it starts with recreational cycling. And the more you get people used to having more trails and more recreational cycling, some of those people will morph into actually taking their bicycles to work.
Right.
And we just don't have that opportunity right now. There's no good way to get from Hernando to Memphis on a bicycle if you're working there.
Right. And in Germantown, we think of that as a suburban kind of car area. Let's start with transportation. I mean, public transportation. What is there demand? Is there available? I really don't know what the public transportation situation is now in Germantown, and where do you see it going?
Sure. Well, I think we've had the conversation over a couple of decades about light rail, whether you can establish something along the rail system that parallels Poplar Avenue. But again, I don't know if we have the density, we have the infrastructure, we have the wherewithal. That's a significant economic investment in this whole region. In the suburbs, you're looking at not as many people work in Germantown. They usually go out, similar to Mayor Chip's situation. They work in Memphis, they work in other parts of the region. So we are, we are married to our cars in a sense. And but I will give you this to expound on the green print. I think that was, Mayor, that was one of the best catalysts for this region to get us collaboratively meeting several hundred meetings, probably a couple thousand people, all the leaders in this region, and it's probably led us to where we are today. And that grant, I think the county acquired that grant, and that's rails, trails, other connectivity points. But that's just, I think where we are, transportation, we're kind of in an area of, that would be a significant investment for the entire region.
Yeah, and before I go back to Bill, I mean, just green print was signed off on by, I think it was almost 30 different mayors and city councils and town councils across the region, which, I mean, I don't know that the diverse group of communities has ever agreed on anything the way they agreed on that. And I should also just a little bit more about Mid-South Mayor's Council. How many mayors involved? About 20 something, is that correct? There were 20 at last year's Region Smart. You had 200-300 people attending. Back to your issue of demand. But just, these are the three we have here today, but it extends into Arkansas, other folks in Memphis, in Mississippi, Mayor of Memphis and so on. Just
Tunica,
to make
Holly Springs.
Tunica, Holly Springs, okay. But back to Bill.
To the point about the green print and about public transportation, Mayor Luttrell, it seems as if sometimes we talk about a bus ride from point A to point B. Have we changed the definition of what that means so that, for instance, public transportation is more modular, where you might catch a bus for one point, you might have your bicycle with you and ride another point? And have we changed our definition of development from, okay, it's either commercial, it's either homes, it's either a shopping center, office space, or industrial? Are we broader than that now as a result of this?
Yeah, I don't think we are, Bill, really. And the issue that we're encountering here that we must overcome first and foremost is the culture. We're not a mass transit thinking community. Now, I was talking to one of our fellow mayors recently. He says, now, when he and his wife go to New York, they just automatically think mass transit. He says, when they're back here in Shelby County, they never think of mass transit because we just have never established a culture here to get down to the fine points and specifics that you've just talked about there. It starts with, and this is no easy task, and it's certainly no quick task, but somehow or another we've got to build a culture of acceptance of public transportation. And part of that comes with density. We don't have density here that really can foster that type of serious discussion. So there are many preliminary steps that must be taken in the culture of public transportation before we're really going to be able to make any significant changes in the direction that we go.
Well, and that kind of density, if it happens, also represents a form of culture shock to someone who's used to living in a city that's been this spread out. More density is an adjustment for living styles that I think sometimes we don't immediately think about when we throw the word density around, and we throw it around a lot these days.
We do throw it around a lot. We're hearing a lot about it in some of the discussions here in Tennessee about annexation and de-annexation and density and lack of it. So it's an issue that I think as we see the cost of government, density comes into that discussion because it does have a significant impact on the cost of rendering services.
But you all have density right now. I mean, some changes in land use and zoning that went through that is not the typical Germantown suburban plan. Talk a little bit about that to increase density in part.
Yeah,
right?
well, we only have so much land left. We're a landlocked community, fully annexed, and so of our 20 or so square miles, 3 of that is commercial, and so we're trying to get the most impact we can there. And so we've had parking decks in our city since the mid-'70s, and we have more of those parking structures coming online to get people to anchor a car and then create a walkability in our downtown with streetscape enhancements and that type of thing. We've had conversations with MATA, one of our largest employers, Methodist Le Bonheur Germantown, has roughly 2,000 people on their campus at any given time, and they only have so much parking. And so we've asked MATA, could they come up with a plan to get employees to Methodist so that you can save some parking spaces, create more ease of mobility as far as being on their campus, getting to their campus. So we're trying to embrace and work those challenges out in Germantown as well.
Back to Bill.
In the age of mixed use, what does mixed use look like in North Mississippi then?
You know, we've got a traditional neighborhood development that came on the books called Hernando West in 2007, and then of course the economy tanked, so it's been sitting there. But we think it's about to come back. They just sold the first 9 lots over there. And I think that mixed use is going to be shown in there. We're going to have housing right next to businesses, which is really interesting. The average person, the way I grew up was you want business over here and you want houses over here. But then I moved into old downtown, and people, if I put my house on the market, people would line up to buy it, and I can see a business out my front door and out my back door, and there's apartments next door, but nobody wants to recreate that. They all want it if it's there, but they don't want to recreate it. And so it's back to changing mindsets. We've got to make people understand that living next to something it makes it easier. It keeps you out of your car. I can walk to the bank, I can walk to work, and we need to make people understand that that's not a bad thing, and it makes the property values higher. And it all goes back to education.
So what are the barriers to that in Hernando, in North Mississippi? Because you're right from my observations that I've seen. that's where you kind of notice the difference the most on both sides of the state line.
And probably our barriers are our zoning codes. And that's, once we get past this election and get a new board seated in July and get past the budget time, we're going to be looking at updating our comprehensive plan, which will affect zoning. You know, even in our historic downtown area, the zoning that works on the other side of the interstate doesn't work there. So we're going to have to find a new way and have some deep, serious conversations with people about zoning and how we're going to move forward and keeping our tax rates low. You know, the elementary answer to me is, if you've got a mile of road and I can put 40 people on that mile instead of 10 people, well, it's a lot cheaper to help keep that road.
Right.
And
well,
so we need to work on that.
Back to the Harold Collins story. I mean, I think there was a Brookings Institute study 5 years ago, that some of the least economically mobile areas in the country, and it was one of the highest ranked least economically mobile, the people who started in poverty, stayed in poverty, was South Atlanta, which was shocking because we think of Atlanta as the shining example of growth, but in South Atlanta there's no transportation, the jobs aren't down there, and I might have the region slightly wrong, but it was a great study about, you get these pockets of poverty where people get stuck away from the jobs without good transportation, and they don't have good transportation in that area. For you, as mayor, when you look at, say, Memphis 3.0, and we talk about planning, I know that's a City of Memphis project, but it obviously impacts, that's a big part of Shelby County. Do you think that's the right direction? Do you think de-annexation is the right direction? Do you think these kind of re-looking at the footprint and how we zone and where we concentrate economic development, are these important and proper movements?
Well, yes, the quick answer, and I applaud Mayor Strickland for his initiative on 3.0, because, you know, one of the things that becomes very apparent to me is that there's not any one issue that's going to change the dynamic of the community. When you look at cities that have a reasonably progressive approach to the course of business, you'll hear the term livability. Livability. And livability is really the integration of all of those factors that you look for in a city. Everything from transportation to education to good health care to workforce development, economic development, all of those collectively being thought of as in the context of one. And if we can start thinking in terms of not any one thing is going to change the direction of the community, it's a collaboration of all of those elements, right, then that's where you really start pulling all of the constituencies within the community together, which is what we were able to achieve with the regional green print. We're seeing it to some extent in the areas of economic development, where we're collaborating more on a much larger area. So there's the concept, and it basically comes down to regionalism. The concept comes down to thinking of ourselves as a singular entity as opposed to multiple different entities.
How does that go over with your legislative bodies? I mean, how does that go over with the Board of Aldermen when you start talking about thinking regionally? Are they on board with that, or are you a kind of voice in the wilderness?
Sure. No, I think it's embraced by our legislative branch. I think that they fully realize that we're a component of a greater region. When we visit Nashville to meet with our state legislators, we bring our individual agenda, and then oftentimes we'll share things that we piggyback on Shelby County, on City of Memphis that we support. And so they get it. We're in a different dawn, a different age. It's so important to work together, and our legislative body agrees with that.
And yours? I mean, you have a town council. I apologize.
We have a board of aldermen.
Yeah. I mean, are they on board with this, with Greenprint and with working across the region, or is that something you've had to talk them into?
No, our board unanimously passed the Greenprint resolution when it came before us. So I think that showed that they're in support of it. And they know that we are a bedroom community at this point. We've got a couple of major manufacturers, but nowhere near enough to employ all our people. So they do understand the importance of the regional aspect and the regional look we have to take.
And what about the Mississippi legislature? I mean, do they welcome this kind of talk, or do they say, no, we're on our own?
In Jackson, they refer to us as South Memphis in DeSoto County sometimes, and not in a nice way. So we have to remind them we are still part of Mississippi. And so it's a delicate dance we have to do. And we are part of the Memphis metro region, and we have to act regionally, but we're also part of the state of Mississippi, so we have to keep the irons in both fires there.
You mentioned education, and I know one focus for Region Smart, and again next week through ULI and the Mid-South Mayor's Council, one focus is workforce. We got about a minute left. I mean, what all can you do with separate school systems, separate colleges, what all can be done to work together on workforce development? Who wants to take this?
I'll jump in quickly. I think we just we need to better understand what the needs are, and each community can work toward their strengths to produce something in part of that greater need. We can't solve it all ourselves. And I'll defer to.
Well, I think this is where really political leadership needs to step up. People like us need to get out there and start talking about the value of working together, the value of pooling our resources. This is where political leadership really earns its stars, is when we get out there and start being on the point with some of these issues.
Again, and for you, just a couple of seconds left here.
I think we've got to do it, and I think I'm an example of it. You know, I graduated from South Haven High School. I did my first 2 years at Northwest Mississippi Community College, and my last 2 years at the University of Memphis.
Yeah.
We can work with education across the state lines to get everybody trained in whatever area they want to be trained so we can move forward.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for being here. Join us again next week.